Jamaica Archives and Records Department, JARD, welcomes you this morning to the official launch of Records and Information Management RIM Month 2023. It is my pleasure to be here with you this morning under the theme, Reigniting a Nation for Greatness, Managing and Preserving the Records of Our Nation. May I begin by acknowledging Mr. Charlton McFarlane, Chief Executive Officer, Registrar General's Department, and Deputy Keeper of the Records. He's also Deputy Chairman of the JARD Board. I'd also like to acknowledge Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, Deputy Director of the Institute of Jamaica, and also a member of JARD's board. Mr. Damien Cox, Acting Principal Director, Information Division, Office of the Prime Minister. Ms. Valsina Hamill, Acting Senior Director, Public Sector Modernization Division, the Office of the Cabinet. Also like to acknowledge Dr. Elisabeth Shepherd, Professor of Archives and Records Management, Department of Information Studies at University College London. Mrs. Claudette Thomas, Government Archivist, Jamaica Archives and Records Department, as well as Ms. Andrea C. White, a member of the board of JARD. Other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen who are with us face-to-face, and those that are joining us online, whether it's on the GIS platform or JARD's YouTube and Facebook platforms, a very, very good morning to you. May I invite us to be upstanding for Jamaica's national anthem. Thank you so much. You may be seated. Our national anthem itself, a prayer as we get things started this morning to launch the Records and Information Management Month for this year. You know, they say knowledge is power, and power provides information. Information leads to education. Education breeds wisdom. And wisdom itself is liberation. People are not liberated because of a lack of knowledge. And we're here this morning because we want to reignite a nation for greatness. And part of that knowledge base is being able to manage and to preserve the records of our nation. So this is a very, very important activity. And I'm really delighted to be here. And again, I say, welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to begin with opening remarks from Christelle Scott, Acting Senior Archivist, the Government Records Center, Jamaica Archives and Records Department. But before she comes to the lectern, allow me to extend apologies on behalf of our Minister, Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, who has responsibility for information. Education was another life, but information in the Office of the Prime Minister. And I'd also like to extend apologies for the Permanent Secretary in the Office of the Prime Minister, Permanent Secretary Audrey Sewell, who is unavoidably absent this morning. Please put your hands together now for Christelle Scott as she comes with opening remarks. And I think we can do better than that. Come on, make some noise for her.
Thank you, Mrs. Stevenson-Daly. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I take this opportunity to recognize the following persons: Mr. Damian Cox, Acting Principal Director for Information Division; Mrs. Claudette Thomas, Government Archivist of Jamaica Archives and Records Department; Mr. Carlton McFarlane, Chief Executive Officer of the Registrar General's Department and also the Deputy Keeper of Records; Mr. Dr. Damian Black, the Commissioner or the Chief Executive Officer of Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission. You can't see me nervous, don't? Thank you. Mr. Leslie Harrow, or in his stead, if he's not here as yet, Ms. Patrick Shaw, the Deputy Director from the Institute of Jamaica. Also, Ms. Valsina Hamill, Acting Senior Director in the Public Sector Modernization Division of the Office of the Cabinet. I will recognize members of the Archives Advisory Committee, Directors of Documentation, Information and Access Services, all RIM professionals. Our public lecturer for today, Dr. Elisabeth Shepherd, the Professor of Archives and Records Management from the University College London, distinguished guests in the audience. Thank you to each and every one of you for being here with us today. I am also pleased to welcome those who are joining us virtually via the online platforms. Today, we officially launch our celebration of RIM Month 2023 under the theme, Reigniting a Nation for Greatness, Managing and Preserving the Records of our Nation. As I thought about this theme, I wondered, what does it mean to reignite? The Oxford Learner's Dictionary says it means to start burning again, to make something burn again, and it is a verb. So this means there is an action in order for fire to be reignited. And that means there was once fire and we want to get it back, right? I use this analogy that I'm sure most of us will be familiar with. When you're cooking Sunday dinner, the chicken is fried and you're waiting on the rice and peas to finish. And then the gas done. We are not going to substitute anything else on a Sunday dinner, right? So we call the gas person, we ask them to come, or we jump in our vehicles and we go to a service outlet and we purchase a gas, we reach home, we reconnect, and we reignite. And that is what we're trying to do at the Jamaica Archives and Records Department. We're trying to reignite our passion for this nation's greatness. Marcus Garvey wrote, "A people without knowledge of their history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." JARD's mandate is to ensure that all official records are managed according to the established standards and they are preserved as they speak directly to our heritage. We will ensure that Jamaicans are not likened to trees without roots. I will focus on our RIM practitioners as we say thank you for your hard work and your dedication. Thank you for working with us. You have worked towards implementing the Government of Jamaica's Records and Information Management project, and we're therefore working together to ensure that our nation's records are safeguarded. We want to appreciate or acknowledge 8 such entities who will be here today recognized for completing the implementation program, and you will find out more about these 8 entities later on, so I will not get into that. What is next for our celebration? After today, we continue celebrating on Wednesdays with the RIM Wednesdays. So our next celebration will be April 12, where we will be releasing our 3rd issue of the RIM zine. We will also be doing publications, articles, television, and radio interviews. On April 19, we will be doing the training of trainers across all MDAs. And on April 26, we end with the RIM Shout Out and Clear the Desk Day. There will also be a private workshop on April 12, only for the members of Cohort 4. Most of the other events I mentioned will be accessible to all persons. We will be sending out emails. If you do not receive any email, please contact us at Jamaica Archives and Records Department. To wrap up, I conclude with something I learned last year, 2022 RIM month. The audiovisual unit of our organization released a video I have never seen before in my life, and you can visit them to get access to this video. They showed Jamaica celebrating our independence. What I did not know was that there was a torch that went around the island, and it ended at the National Stadium in 1962. The torch and the flag, the national flag of Jamaica, and I was impressed. More to say, there was also island-wide celebration in every single parish, celebrating the culture, the dance, the poetry, and to say it was very awesome for me. I recognize that we have a unique talent, we have a unique culture, and videos like this, information like this, is what we need to share with the public so that we can renew our passion for our nation. Thank you everyone for being here, and have a great day.
Thank you so very much, Christelle Scott. I hope that she has started that ignition, yes, so that the passion can burn again. And I also want to thank you for thanking the RIM professionals, because without them, we wouldn't have the information, and their dedication, their steadfastness is evident. We're going to move now to greetings from the Acting Senior Director, Public Sector Modernization Division in the Office of the Cabinet. And I'd like for you to put your hands together and make welcome Miss Valsina Hamill.
Good morning, everyone. Masters of Ceremony, Mrs. Marlene Stevenson-Daly, the CEO of RGD, Mrs. Claudette Thomas, Government Archivist, Mr. Damian Cox, Principal Director of the Information Division in the Office of the Prime Minister, and Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw from the Institute of Jamaica, other specially invited guests, the JAR team, members of the public, and those who are viewing us virtually on the various platforms. Welcome, and thank you for being here. The Office of the Cabinet's Public Sector Modernization Division is pleased again to be partnering with the Office of the Prime Minister and the Jamaica Archives Records Department in the celebration of RIM Month 2023. During this month, we pause to recognize the value of accurate and efficient preservation and security of records. At this time, this is a time when we also acknowledge the RIM professionals for the work that you do in preserving official government and private records. The Information Division is strategically placed within the Office of the Prime Minister, and with this positioning is poised to drive the RIM program throughout the government. This position is further strengthened by the partnership with the Office of the Cabinet. The Public Sector Modernization Division is a the Public Sector Modernization Program is a government-wide program that aims to meet the challenges of Jamaica's economic growth by creating performance-driven public institutions that are serving our people and businesses with better and faster solutions that help our businesses compete and provide public services. The Public Sector Modernization Division has established a long-standing relationship working with the team at Jamaica Archives and Records Department to ensure the RIM program is implemented across all our ministries, departments, and agencies. This will ensure all activities and decisions of the Government of Jamaica are fully and accurately documented, managed, and monitored in accordance with the regulatory framework. As a team, we are collectively working to ensure our initiatives towards Vision 2030 are achieved. This is one aspect of the modernization program and thrust to address public sector efficiency and ease of doing business. So far, we have worked together with JARD to onboard 59 entities across 4 cohorts. Today, we celebrate with 8 entities that have so far completed the implementation of the manual RIM. We have already worked along with JARD in doing a consultancy for the capacitation of RIM professionals, where there are now new RIM competencies and learning pathways that will be implemented in another few months for the RIM professionals. And we have also supported the team in conducting a strategic review of the Jamaica Archives and Records Department. The implications of the RIM program are significant. We are reminded of the far-reaching importance of the RIM program in its potential to impact current and future government programs, including the National Identification System, NIDS, which, it's at the tip of everybody's tongue now. There is also the Data Collection and Information Sharing Policy, which is quite inclusive, and the Data Protection Act, digitalization, which is where the government is going now, among other initiatives which are closely aligned with the RIM program. The success of Jamaica's modernization program is heavily linked to the RIM program, even as we in the Public Sector Modernizing Division roll out in some instances and in others bolster the various projects that will impact our country. There are clear alignments in the digitization of records, for example, that contribute towards the capability of initiatives such as the .gov.jm portal. I hope many of you have already been on that portal, the .gov.jm portal, which provides information and links to the various government websites and give other information. This website allows users of government services to get more information and access specific services through a single digital portal. In the Public Sector Modernization Division, in 2022, we launched the Service Excellence Policy, and this is also a significant channel through which service excellence is now being channeled through the government. And with the RIM program being implemented, it's of significant importance with service excellence because the RIM program is enhancing the service delivery of accessing records in GOJ. As the program is bolstered and more entities are onboarded, RIM will become the backbone and anchor for Jamaica's transition to a digital society. The Office of the Cabinet takes this opportunity to wish the JARD team a successful RIM month of activities, and we will continue to support you in your endeavors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hamill, reminding us of the significant implications and impact of this modernization program that we have been talking about. You heard the word she used? RIM is the backbone, the anchor for Jamaica's digitalization, and that shows you how important this is. Thank you very much, Ms. Hamill, for your contribution this morning, representing the Public Sector Modernization Division in the Office of the Cabinet. We look forward to handing over those eight entities that have completed their certificates, so I'm not sure exactly what you're going to be handing over, but we look forward to recognizing them later on in the program. Let's now welcome Mr. Charlton McFarlane, Chief Executive Officer, Registrar General's Department and Deputy Keeper of the Records, as he comes with his greetings. Make him welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's not too bad. Could be better. So I'm going to pause. We have any Jago past students here? Okay. We have any Calabar past students here? Well, I am a proud Fortist, and I will say no more on that because, you know. Mrs. Marlene Stevenson-Daly, our Master of Ceremonies, Ms. Crystal Scott, our Acting Senior Archivist, have Ms. Valsina Hamill, our Acting Senior Director in the Public Sector Modernization Division. We also have, and I'd also like to recognize my good friend, Mr. Damian Cox, Acting Principal Director in the Information Division at the Office of the Prime Minister. I'd like to recognize as well Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, Ms. Kimberly Blackwin, of course, Ms. Claudette Thomas, government archivist, and Professor Elisabeth Shepherd, and also Mrs. Raquel Strawn in Rarity. Now, when I was asked to bring greetings this morning, I was also asked, I don't know if my reputation would have preceded me, but I was asked and admonished not to get carried away verbally or emotionally, because I would have been carried away physically. So I will be brief as I can be. So, records management, and I did the research, it's many things, but it can be seen primarily as the supervision and the administration of digital or paper records, regardless of the format. And the record management activities include the creation, the receipt, the maintenance, the use, and the disposal of records. And in this context, a record is content that documents some form of transaction. Now, documentation may exist in the form of contracts, memos, paper files, video messages, and emails, and database records. And of course, these records may be stored physically or in the cloud. One of the primary goals of records management is to help an organization keep the necessary documentation accessible for business operations and for compliance audits. In a real way, records provide the only real and undeniable and largely irrefutable evidence of the history and the context within which certain decisions are made. The real benefit of which is to equip current and future leaders with the requisite background and foundation to make optimal decisions. As we celebrate Records and Information Management Month for 2023, we commend the leadership of JAD under Madam Claudette Thomas for aptly choosing the theme, Reigniting a Nation for Greatness, Managing and Preserving the Records of Our Nation. The fact that your theme simultaneously connects retrospective matters versus prospective matters points to the timeless constancy of record management. It also speaks to the fact that proper record management is also a critical underpinning tenet of our development. And this is captured in our Sustainable Development Goals, in particular Goal 16, I believe, .10. As a country, we must recognize not only the historical and social value of record management, but we must recognize the economic value of this discipline. And failure to recognize the economic value will result in extremely high opportunity cost. Because if you think it is costly to make a particular decision, it will cost even more when that decision is underpinned by incorrect information. This RIM month is geared at bringing into focus all these issues and also to reignite, right, Ms. Scott? There's that word again. To reignite and further the dialogue that's required around modernization of policies and supportive legislation that is needed to support a digital transformation of records management in Jamaica. I congratulate the leadership of this. Well, I congratulate the leadership of JAD in this regard and wish for them a successful RIM month. But more importantly, I hope that this will be the catalyst for sustained attention, for sustained action, and for sustained investment in records management throughout the public sector. Ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. And on that note, I would like to say, on behalf of the Minister without portfolio in the Office of the Prime Minister with responsibility for information, the Honorable Robert Nestor Morgan, and also on behalf of the Chief Justice of Jamaica, the Honorable Brian Sykes, as the Deputy Keeper of the Records and as the Deputy Chair of the Archives Advisory Committee, I hereby officially declare RIM Month 2023 officially open. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McFarlane, for your thoughts that you shared with us this morning, and of course for doing the official declaration of the opening of the RIM Month activities. It calls for a cultural item, not true? Yeah. We have with us this morning a singer. I don't have much information about her, but she's going to come and, show her stuff at this time. She's called Girl, G-I-H-R-L. And she's accompanied by Javon Jones on guitar. I trust they are within the sound of my voice, because I don't want to have to dance. I don't want to have to sing. I have no talents in that area. Are they with us this morning? They are? All right. Well, let's make them welcome. Girl, accompanied by Javon Jones. Here they come. One more time. Give it up. Come along.
1, 2. 1, 2. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. How is everyone this morning? You guys are awake. Like you're up. I'm a performer. We wake up at midday. So hats off to you guys. I'm Girl, G-I-H-R-L, and I'm here to sing some tunes for you, some little notes. I'm here with Javon Jones. Here we go. look at where I'm coming from. I know I'm blessed, so I close my eyes and smile. Sometimes I feel like the richest girl in Babylon, and I've done my best, so everything's alright inside. Oh, every morning when I rise, I stare at the sun. I know it is a blessing, so when the evening comes, I lift up my hands to the hills. I'm blessed, oh man, with my two hands in the air as far as I can. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh. I look at the sun, I know it is a blessing, so when the evening comes, I'll lift up my hands to the hills. I'm blessed, oh man, with your two hands in the air as far as you can. Whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh, oh, I see you. Whoa, oh, oh, are you blessed? Whoa, oh, whoa, oh, are you grateful? Whoa, oh, whoa, oh, things hard, but we have life. Yeah? You can sing with me this time? Whoa, oh. 1, 2, 3, and whoa, oh. Let me see your hands if you're grateful. Whoa, oh, whoa, oh, oh, whoa, oh. One more time. Whoa, oh. You sound so good. Whoa, oh, whoa, oh. Ooh, thank you. Jah raise me out of my bed and me go a river, go wash my dread. Me alright, alright, telling me alright. Sunrise wake me up this morning and I can hear Mama Africa calling. Alright, alright. Listen, hey. Don't waste your time with thoughts of giving up. It's all in your mind. Let it go, let it go. I'm here to remind you that anything's possible. Yeah, 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 yeah. Don't waste your time with thoughts of giving up. It's all in your mind. Let it go, let it go. I'm here to remind you that anything's possible. Yeah, 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 yeah. Hey. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Thank you. Is it okay if I share something that belongs to me with you before I go? A quick piece. This is my latest release. It's titled Us, and it's Bugle featuring me. I don't know why I love you so, but I love you. I don't know why I need you so, but I need you. I don't know why I want you so, but I want you. I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. I will always ways to, even if you don't. Ooh, we love to fight, so we fight for love. Wake up, this is us. Sometimes I will, sometimes I won't. Ooh, I will always do, even if you don't. Ooh, we love to fight, so we fight for love. Wake up, this is us, yeah. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of the launch.
Let's hear it one more time for Girl, accompanied by Javon Jones on guitar, acoustic guitars. Wow, sounding good. One more time. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be going into our off-boarding ceremony at this time. And it's important to get a little background. And so I'm going to invite Mr. Damien Cox, the Acting Principal Director, Information Division in the Office of the Prime Minister, to come at this time to tell us a little bit more about the Records and Information Management Program, RIM. Please, a round of applause for him.
Good morning, everybody. All protocols observed. I thank you all for being here with us today. It is indeed about us. This RIM is about us, and it is about preserving our history and also ensuring that we are able to deliver for the citizens of this country and members of the public who require government services. So, in terms of the background, some of which would have been mentioned quite ably by Ms. Hamill from the Office of the Cabinet, but I will just go through some brief points and just try to connect how important the Records and Information Management Program and project is as we look to transform as a government and to be able to deliver the services that are required for a modern Jamaica and its citizens. So the RIM policy is the underpinning of what we're doing right now, and that was approved by Cabinet in 2018, and that was the why of that was to standardize certain practices, to improve certain records and information management practices, looking at also the component of strengthening the Jamaica Archives and Records Department, to put JARD fully at the center, and also to strengthen their operations, not just for now and the needs and requirements of now, but for the needs and requirements of the future. But also looking broadly at the needs of strengthening the capacity and capabilities and core competencies of our RIM professionals, developing those professionals in a broad, whole, and holistic way to provide the services that are needed for Jamaica right now, but also Jamaica into the future. So the RIM project, as Ms. Hamill mentioned, we have 59 entities. We have onboarded 4 cohorts up to now. The last cohort, cohort 4, recently onboarded in the last year, and is 19 entities at the moment. We have 6 key areas, and those key areas, key results areas, is looking at, as I mentioned, transformation of JARD, looking at digitization, which is the next component for the 8 entities that are here with us today to be off-boarded, who have completed the manual RIM program, and we need to congratulate them for that. I know we're going to congratulate them later, but I would ask you to join me in giving them a small round of applause. It is not an easy process, and we know that for the cohorts that we have onboarded from cohort 1 to 3, there have been challenges. COVID has presented quite some challenges. I think the average person doesn't realize how much records are generated on a daily basis within the public sector, and how important it is to manage those, those records, and when the time comes to archive those records, to ensure effective decision-making, as Mr. McFarlane indicated earlier. These activities, and I want to locate it into the broader framework, they're related to digital transformation. They're related to service excellence, as Ms. Hamill mentioned earlier. In this increasingly digital world, the implications for the privacy of individuals, that government holds a lot of information with the personal information of persons, so the Data Protection Act that's going to come into force shortly, there are all connections that we need to make with privacy, artificial intelligence at this time, and what that means for the management of records, the use of data, the processing of that data. We're in the age of, I think when ChatGPT-3 was released, we thought that was obviously a watershed moment, but I don't know how many persons would have foreseen the release of ChatGPT-4 so soon. And the release of ChatGPT-4 has caused significant concerns, and those of you who follow these issues, you would note that a number of investigations have now been launched by privacy regulators across the world, and also ChatGPT-4, I think, has actually been banned in Italy, at least for the moment. So these technological issues we're going to continue to have to face, and that's why the underpinning of what we need to do, you have to get that records, information, and management correctly. Get that right. That's the foundation, as Mr. Charlton said. If you think about it, and I will use the RGD because that is something that we can all understand. You know, if your birth information is not correct at the start, you're going to have a problem. That affects you throughout your life. So that is a significant example of how important records and information management is to all of us. If your tax information is not correct, right? If the information that you provide for your pension service is not recorded correctly, if the information is not maintained correctly. And also, we have to recognize that in this time, we face increasing cybersecurity threats, which is another level. So how we process the information that we have, how we maintain it, how we protect it, those things are all interconnected with what we do in terms of records and information management. They're not separate pools that don't come together. And that is something that we need to make the connections with. Our need for providing transparency on the SDG 1610, right? Access to information to the public, to provide information to policymakers to make effective decisions. Those things are all related to effective records and information management within the public sector, right? Which is our focus. So, when we talk about records and information management, and this is a month is a focused celebration of it, it's important to recognize that it's about us, as Girl just said. So RIM is about us. It is about anything being possible. It is about preserving our heritage. As Christelle said, even today, there are things that you haven't seen, that if you're able to access them, it not only brings a sense of pride to you, but it connects the present with the past, so that we are not trees without roots. So this activity, it's often not the most glamorous function. I know RIM professionals who would say they don't feel like they're celebrated as core as they are to the process of government and governance and the functioning of our modern state. But we are a great nation. It's not just words on a paper. And reigniting a nation for greatness, managing and preserving the records of our nation is a core activity that is fundamental to our achievement of becoming a developed country and to taking our rightful place at all times in the community of nations. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Cox. So important as we improve and standardize government record keeping for the needs of our future. There's so many variables, and I know many persons are involved. So the challenge is also how to integrate all of this and make it seamless. But I believe as just the average person who at some point in time will have to utilize the services, I like the talk about service excellence. So at the end of the day, if you can do that, if you can have all those records that we talk about for decision making, records that we talk about to allow us to reach some of the larger goals as a nation, then, we know that at the end of the day, with service excellence, we are serving the individual, the Jamaican, that is so important and at the heart of all of this. So thank you, Mr. Cox, and thanks again to our RIM professionals. Now, I believe Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, Deputy Director of the Institute of Jamaica, is one of the organizations that will be awarded this morning as part of Cohort 2. And she is here with us this morning to bring her own testimonial and to share with us part of her journey. Would you please make her welcome?
Mrs. Claudette Thomas, Government Archivist, Dr. Elisabeth Shepherd, Professor of Archives and Records Management, Mr. Damian Cox, Acting Principal Director, Ms. Crystal Scott, Acting Senior Archivist, Government Records Center, Ms. Valsina Hamill, Acting Senior Director, Public Sector Modernization Division of the Office of the Cabinet, Mr. Carlton McFarlane, Chief Executive Officer, Registrar General's Department, and Deputy Keeper of the Records, Mr. Leslie Harrow, our Executive Director of the Institute of Jamaica, fellow awardees, JAR team, performers, other specially invited guests, good morning. All right, when Ms. O'Connor asked me to do this, I was like, no, but let's go. The Institute of Jamaica made strides in 2019 to begin the implementation of the GOJ Records Information Management RIM system. We became aware of a national policy on records information management, which was approved by Cabinet in July 2018 through our partnership with the Jamaica Archives and Records Department. This, we learned, was among the first major steps towards the modernization and transformation in the way ministries, departments, and agencies made accessible the records of the government, manage, secured, and preserve archival material. As a major cultural repository for Jamaica's tangible and intangible cultural heritage, operating special libraries, a decentralized registry system, museums, and galleries, we recognize that this was a unique opportunity for us to improve our records management system and our capacity to better serve our various cadre of clients. We made the wise decision to become part of the new process, and it was for this reason we requested the Jamaica Archives and Records Department support in implementing the RIM project. The IOJ was reassured that JARD would help us through this unfamiliar process. Technical guidance was also to be provided by the Ministry of Education and Information and the Cabinet Office to begin the process. JARD conducted sensitization workshop with the team on Records Information Management System. JARD met with our senior managers in June 2019 to initiate the implementation of the RIM project. A team of persons from the ministry, the cabinet office, and JARD, along with the HOPE program, discussed the expectation and resources required for the project. We were then encouraged to attend workshops. Initially, it was only attended by the members of the registry department, as buy-in was difficult from the divisions and departments. To assess our current status, JARD required IOJ to complete a basic efficiency and operational audit of our records. They looked at our governance, our control system, facilities and maintenance, monitoring and compliance system, and human resource needs. We were then required to develop a project implementation team, develop a RIM committee, develop and finalize project implementation team and budget, commitment from divisions and to get commitment from divisions and departments, and provisions for technical and human resources. 1 month after we met with JARD for the initiation project, we had completed our project charter. In the same period, IOJ needed to revitalize its RIM committee with persons who were previously trained in records management. With the increased number of workshops by JARD during this period, it equipped officers with the requisite competencies. We therefore saw an increase in persons now willing to participate in the project. By December 2020, we had selected our chair and vice chairpersons of our RIM committee. We had developed our terms of reference for the committee, and we had conducted regular meetings to fulfill the targets in the project charter. This was not without its challenges. During this same period, we embarked on the record survey. However, we did not have the requisite in-house human resource to cover the agency. We had reached a bottleneck. We had a decentralized system, and for persons who hear about the Institute of Jamaica, you might just think that it's one division. We have 5 divisions, and we have up to 13 departments, and everybody is producing records, right? So we had a decentralized registry system consisting of our registry department with only 2 registry officers. We had no registry manager as stipulated in the policy. 5 special libraries, 5 divisions, and as I said, the departments. We then prepared a justification to the ministry, that is the Ministry of Finance and Public Sector, for our manager, which we did not get. Over our 2019-2020 budget, it did not include the resources for implementation. So we did our project charter, very nicely done, and submitted that. But however, none of these things was in the approved budget. So we had needed laptops, pencils, tapes, labels, clipboards, and a number of things, which was not in the budget. By September 2019, we needed a solution. So we spoke to JARD, and they referred us to Ms. Tracy Ann Walker, the component coordinator at the Office of the Prime Minister for the HOPE program. And by December 2020, IOJ had utilized 12 interns to review over 8,522 files. Unfortunately, by November, the regulations of the HOPE program changed, and we were now required to pay the interns a stipend, and this was not in the budget. As a result, the project had to almost come to a halt without the intervention, so we then turned to HART, and that was Tony Ann Daly for the Job Placement and Facilitation Officer, and she was kind enough to give us some interns that we didn't have to pay for. Then we went on to the RIM policy. So we developed our RIM policy through the workshop provided by JARD. We drafted our policy, and it was reviewed by JARD, so we're always getting our feedback. And we were like a child, and JARD was our mother, and we were not leaving her, right? So we complete the RIM the procedures manual. We did our manual, and we prepared that, gave it to JARD, and they gave us our feedback. We then started our classification. The team attended workshop for the classification system. The RIM committee, then we realized because we had so many records, there was something that says that the RIM committee should meet like every quarter. No. So we had to meet weekly to go through, we had to go through meet weekly, which was every Wednesday at 9 o'clock or every Wednesday at 2 o'clock. To meet weekly to go through the MDA specific classification system for IOJ, which is a 1400. And we started here. It's funny that the first meeting that we had with JARD was here. Yes, it was here. So we started here and we end here. Yes. So we had a first workshop with a classification system trying to teach us how to go through, because everything that they provided was like everybody else. We're IOJ. We're different. So when they reached us, they're like, yes, IOJ. Right? So we learned how to go through our special classification, and we submitted this to JARD. We did our file plan with the guidance of our record management analyst. Records appraisal and retention with the relevant documents were provided by JARD. RIM committee still met weekly to go through the registry files. So we had to do one department at a time. That's what we realized. We couldn't do everything one time. So we decided to do the registry. Guidance was given by our management, the record management analyst for the reclassification, and now we are at destruction, right? Our recommendation for anybody who is taking this on: ministries should implement the RIM project before their agencies. So one other thing we learned, that when we were having challenges, we went to ministry. Ministry don't know what we were doing. So we were ahead of the ministry, all right? And so because of that, it was difficult to get buy-in, and it was difficult to get additional funds because they didn't understand the importance of what we were doing. But now I hear that the ministry is in one of the cohorts, right? So we're better than the ministry. All right? The project charter for the RIM implementation should be done in collaboration with your budget. We had selected to start the RIM in July. In hindsight, probably that wasn't a good idea. We should have done it in collaboration with the budget preparation. So all those aspects for computers, whatever it is that we would have needed would have been placed in the budget. But you're excited to get on board, and so we had kind of jumped the gun, but we just did it a different way. I wouldn't say the wrong way, but a different way. Agencies will have severe challenges if funds are not allocated for this initiative. The RIM policy sets performance standards for MDS, which gives the ideal. However, these guidelines do not reflect the realities of what is happening in the agencies. There are no registry managers, and so when you do your justification and send it to ministry and they tell you, no, you're going back to the policy, but the policy says this. And so there's a disconnect with some of the requirements that is required by the agencies when it is that we're not giving the resources. Human resource will continue to be a problem. JARD needs to assist in helping to source interns to facilitate agencies, because as you get the interns, you realize you will move faster in terms of your implementation. And I end. But I cannot end without saying special thanks to Ms. Kimberly Blackwin, our record analysis. We've had several. Ms. Joan O'Connor, where is she? God sent, God sent. Mr. Marlon Cranston, okay, he's still with us now. So although we don't have a sign, we call him every day, right? Hartrust NTA for always providing us with the intern and the HOPE program. They have been fabulous. This was not an easy journey. We had many obstacles, however, we had the end in sight. We wanted to create a better system for the staff and by extension, the public we serve. We are better able to manage and preserve the records of our nation, Jamaica land we love. And we have reignited greatness. Right?
Thank you, Mrs. Patrick Shaw, for sharing your journey at the Institute of Jamaica. And I feel the passion. And I sense that you're feeling very proud this morning, having stayed the course, and at the end of the day, you're able to offer much better service to all of us. And I know the Institute of Jamaica is such an important space in the preservation of our history, our heritage here in Jamaica. Thank you for sharing with us. And for those persons who are yet to complete, there are some lessons learned there that I think you can have as a takeaway. The constraints that you may face, the budgetary constraints, that's always there. We just have to find a way around that for the most part. Sometimes we have to be creative. But at the end of the day, the help that you got the collaboration, so very important as we move forward. And I'm seeing a certain company on the list here which was in cohort 1, which is not here today, so I certainly have, we're not calling any names, all right? Oration of the citation this morning, ladies and gentlemen, will be done by Ms. Kimberly Blackwin, Records Analyst, Government Records Center, Jamaica Archives and Records Department. Would you put your hands together and make her welcome?
Good morning, everyone. All protocols observed. This year, as we commemorate Records and Information Management Month under the theme, Reigniting a Nation for Greatness, Managing and Preserving Records of Our Nation, the Office of the Prime Minister is pleased to take the next few minutes to recognize the commitment, resilience, and perseverance of 8 entities which successfully implemented the manual component of the new GOJ RIM program. In 2019, the impact of the novel coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic hurled us into an environment of unprecedented challenges. Even with the new paradigm of working from home, the work of the RIM implementation program still progressed. In some instances, the Director of Documentation and Access Services, Records Manager, or assigned officers were the main individuals executing the major aspects of the 10-point steps of the program. There were inadequate supplies of interns to do labor-intensive tasks, lack of space to process records, budget constraints, and insufficient computers, to highlight only a few of the hurdles. These 8 entities successfully implemented the manual component of the RIM program and will be offboarded in this ceremony. They include the Auditor General's Department, Child Protection and Family Services Agency, Heart and STA Trust, the Institute of Jamaica, Jamaica Archives and Records Department, Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, Ministry of Justice, and the Office of the Cabinet. In this very auspicious moment, the team from the Office of the Prime Minister, the Office of the Cabinet, and the JARD are not only celebrating the official launch of RIM Month 2023, we are also acknowledging the hard work, dedication, and commitment of these 8 entities to be awarded. From this exercise, we are convinced that prospective clients will aspire to implement the Government of Jamaica Records and Information Management Policy, having witnessed today's event. Today's offboarding exercise will provide a lasting impression on all ministries, departments, and agencies to continue with their digital RIM program. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly Blackwin, for that oration celebrating the 8 entities that have been successful in this program. I'm going to invite Mr. Damian Cox to do the honors in issuing the certificates and plaques, certificates of achievement and plaques, and they're in no particular order. I will call their names, and I imagine representatives are here. I know IOJ is here for sure, but there are other representatives that are here to receive the certificates and plaques. So, Mr. Cox, you have the honor, sir, and I'm going to begin with the Auditor General's Department. Representative from the Auditor General's Department, please come forward. And please, make some noise for them.
have the plaque and the certificate, please? And from what we heard, we know it's not an easy road, right? So it will require some resources and some stick-to-itiveness and some tenacity and all of those words, those doing words. Congratulations. Auditor General's Department. Thank you so much. Office of the Cabinet. Congratulations to you. Jamaica Archives and Records Department. Leading by example. Yes.
Could we have the team members standing, please? All team members.
Wonderful. And now the Ministry of Justice. Congratulations, Minister of Justice, receiving your Certificate of Achievement and your plaque. Those were from Cohort 1, those entities that we've just indicated. And from Cohort 2, Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission. Congratulations and thank you. Heart NSTA Trust. Child Protection and Family Services Agency. Congratulations. All right, so we have members of the team. And also sharing the joy this morning is the Institute of Jamaica. Congratulations.
makes the dream work.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Mr. Cox.
No, could we have all of JARD coming up, please, with Mr. Cox? That's what it is. All the team members.
All right.
I'm going to ask you to come. They were working during the process, so we allowed them that. So now, come. Okay. Come on, photographer. Mrs. Inarati, please.
Come together, come together.
Come closer, please. Just closer. Thanks. And one member is behind the camera.
And as Mr. McFarlane said earlier on, it's most important to recognize historical and social, as well as the economic value of our records. We can have all the 8 entities that have the plaque and the certificate come forward for a wonderful and nice group photo at this time. So all entities, Auditor General's Department, Office of the Cabinet, Jamaica Archives and Records Department, Ministry of Justice, Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, Heart NSTA Trust, Child Protection and Family Services Agency, and the Institute of Jamaica. And the shorter ones can go to the front. I know that usually poses a challenge because the shorter people think they're tall. But, yes?
Small up ourselves.
And as we get the right shot, let me just remind you about Rim Wednesdays, right? That's coming up as part of the month's activities. And look out for the publications and the various media interviews that are also planned. And the April 19 Training of the Trainer seminar that will be held. And of course, on the 26th of the month, the Rim Shout Out and Clear the Desk Day, if my memory serves me right. There you go. Congratulations all. And I certainly hope this will serve as some encouragement for those persons who are on the journey but are not quite where you are at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to bring back to the front of the room. We have no stage, but he's coming to be on stage. Mr. Javon Jones, who is coming back with a little entertainment for you at this time. Make some noise for him. Javon Jones.
Yeah, hi. Unfortunately, it will only be me now. So I hope I don't bore you. So I'm going to play a piece for you all. So I hope you enjoy it.
Is this love that I'm feeling? I believe Jard will have a record of your performance here today at the launch of the celebrations for RIM 2023. Thank you very much, Javon Jones. Please give him another round of applause. Ladies and gentlemen, we're moving straight into our public lecture. We do have persons who are online. We want to give them a shout out again and to thank them for staying with us. And our very next guest is also, I believe, online. Yes? So let me just introduce her as she comes to do the public lecture. In fact, Mrs. Thomas is down to introduce her. So please put your hands together as she comes. Mrs. Claudette Thomas introducing our special guest lecturer for today.
Wow. Thank you, Mrs. Marlene Stevenson Daly, and all protocols observed. I'd like us to get a brief synopsis of our guest lecturer. We have to share with us from the University College of London, Dr. Elisabeth Shepherd. She is Professor of Archives and Records Management in the Department of Information Studies. And she has held that position since 2011. She joined that organization in 1992 and was there to assist with improving the product of records, archives and records management at this university. She was appointed senior lecturer in 2007, and her research interest after a while at the university was in the development of archives profession in the 20th century England, which is the subject of her PhD monograph. She also pioneered the research in women archivists in England, and her research also in rights in records, links between records management and the information policy, compliance, and government administration data, which includes her support there at the Arts and Archives Research Council there in London. She also gives support at the Economic and Social Research Council that grants which are made available to special projects within London. And being at the Planning Institute of Jamaica, one would want to think that there is that close connection between PIOJ, the ECJ, and that of the research work of Professor Shepherd. Dr. Shepherd originally qualified as an archivist at the UCL and worked in archives and records management in local government before becoming a records management specialist. And she has a company referred to as TFPL. It is really a knowledge and information management company. It's a private organization. They recognize leaders in knowledge and information management sector, and they offer recruitment. I'm sharing this because I think it's very interesting. They offer recruiting, advisory, training, and research service in knowledge management and records management. They recruit knowledge management personnel, designs, and manage libraries and information centers. So in effect, the company also support training for customers and write internet web content. This sharing is just to give us a synopsis of the breadth of our presenter. She's also a teacher, and she supports the program at UCL in producing a number of publications. She also writes for the Archive Science Journal of the Society of Archivists, and her very popular text, I trust most of us here in Jamaica are familiar with it, Managing Records, a Handbook of Principles and Practice, coming out of Facet Publishing since 2003. It is a monograph which is used extensively across the English-speaking Caribbean and also in Africa and other countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, I will not bore you any longer. I'd like you to make very welcome Professor Elisabeth Shepherd as she speaks with us on her perception of records management and its contribution to knowledge and its contribution to national development as we forge along with the RIM program and our plans for the year and other years coming. Make welcome, please. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I'm honoured and delighted to have been invited to speak to you today as part of the celebrations of the Government of Jamaica Archives and Records Management Department in the Records and Information Month 2023. I am going to share some slides with you. Perhaps you could just confirm that you can see them. Are they showing okay? Yes, great. Thank you so much. So all protocols are observed, and thank you for the welcome, the warm welcome. I'm speaking around the theme of reigniting a nation for greatness, managing and preserving the records of our nation. And I am very sorry not to be with you in person, but very happy to be able to join you remotely. I've been asked to give a perspective from the North on the topic of records and information management and nation building. I'm speaking from London in the UK, and my experience is mainly based on the English record-keeping legislative and regulatory framework. I am a white female academic who works in an Anglophone university in London. I can only speak for myself, drawing on my own experience and background. I do not seek to represent the views of others. I have been privileged over the past 30 years to teach students from around the world who have attended UCL to study for their master's programme in Records and Archives Management, or for their doctoral thesis in Information Studies. We welcome students from every country, and over the years, students from East and West Africa, North and South America, the Caribbean, Asia, as well as the continent of Europe have studied in my department. It is enormously enriching for me to have been able to meet and work with them, and wonderful to see our graduates return to their home countries to employ their new skills and knowledge for public and social benefit. As well as teaching and supervising students, I have undertaken research in the broad field of archives, records and information management. And it is this experience on which I will draw today to highlight some themes which I hope will suggest ways in which the discipline and profession of information management enables a nation to build a more equitable and socially just society for all. I will reflect on 3 areas of my research, which I think point to key records management contributions to society. First, I will talk about the legislative framework which supports the preservation and provides access to records in the UK, especially our experience of the Freedom of Information legislation and the General Data Protection Regulation, and how this legislation can be supported and enabled by records managers. Secondly, I will discuss the impact of open government data policies and practices and the approaches and concerns about access to government administrative data, which in some cases are replacing more traditional record formats as evidence of the business of government. Lastly, I will seek to bring a human focus back to records questions by thinking about the people whose lives are captured in records and who, as citizens, information managers, are seeking to serve. Throughout the talk, I will draw on research carried out by me and some co-researchers based at UCL. Over the past 20 years in the UK, the legislative framework governing access to records and information has changed significantly. We have a long-standing Public Records Act dating from 1958, which enshrines the obligation of government to preserve public records, arrange for their transfer to the National Archives, where they will be made available for public access, and to authorise the destruction of records no longer needed. In the 21st century, political rhetoric in the UK, as in many democratic states, has made much of the need to increase public participation in the political process, to improve public understanding of and re-establish public trust and confidence in government decision-making. to increase transparency, openness and accountability of public authorities, and ultimately to produce better government decision-making on behalf of citizens. Many national governments accept the concept of access to information or freedom of information and have introduced legislation to enact this. In the year 2000, the UK Freedom of Information Act was passed into law. The Act imposes significant duties and responsibilities on all public authorities to give access to current information, not only archival records. To achieve this, public authorities need to know what information they hold, to manage and retrieve information effectively, and to deal expeditiously, usually within 20 days, with freedom of information requests. The Lord Chancellor's Code of Practice on the Management of Records, published in compliance with the Act, outlined ways to meet these obligations. As part of the UK's modernising government agenda and the implementation of e-government, which set a target of making all government services available electronically by 2005, freedom of information was a significant part of the wider government agenda to increase openness, transparency, trust and accountability. Progress on e-government reforms tended to be rather slow and focused on technological changes, such as providing access to information via the website, somewhat neglecting the social dimensions to technological change, institutional context, and organisational structures, and rarely implementing holistic reform to information management systems. However, the impact of information policy and freedom of information on public services and the effectiveness of public authorities in meeting their obligations are significant factors in the accountability of government to its citizens. In 2009, I and my colleagues undertook a study of the impact of freedom of information on records managers, mainly in UK local government, and the ways in which information management could help the obligations of the Act. We found that while most interviewees agreed that freedom of information had given records management a higher profile and increased awareness of it as a corporate function, there were few tangible examples of records management being directly transformed or of more resources being given to develop records systems. One records manager said, "We are more high profile, but the actual way we do things hasn't changed." Some expressed concerns that there was a disconnection between information management systems designed for internal processes and their ability to help locate information needed in response to public requests. In the UK, National Records Management leadership is a responsibility of the Cabinet Office, one of the most important ministerial departments, which supports the Prime Minister and ensures the effective running of government, working with the National Archives. Around the world, national bodies, such as JARD, play an essential role in this endeavour. Further reforms to the legislative frameworks concerning data and information privacy came with the European General Data Protection Regulations, or GDPR, which were enacted in the Data Protection Act 2018. GDPR relates to processing by any organisation of personal data of individuals. In other jurisdictions, such regulations are sometimes labelled as privacy laws. The UK law sets out 7 key principles: lawfulness, fairness and transparency, purpose limitation, data minimisation, accuracy, storage limitation, integrity and security, and accountability. It also provides 8 information rights for individuals, such as the right to be informed, the right of access, the right to rectification, the right to erasure, the right to restrict processing. Record keepers play a role in all of these, and their skills are essential ensuring that individual information rights are properly respected. Between these three pieces of legislation, National Archives, freedom of information, and data protection, the UK has a reasonably good balance of legislative and regulatory protections for information and records, providing for their preservation and for public access, whether through archival access to closed records or freedom of information and subject access requests to current information. There is some independent oversight, especially through the regulator, the Information Commissioner, who upholds information rights in the public interest across a range of legislation. There are gaps in the system, especially around archives and records of local government, and there are significant resource constraints everywhere, which limit what record keepers can do. However, a strong legislative framework and regulatory compliance around the creation, preservation, and provision of access to records and information is a cornerstone of an accountable democracy in a nation. Secondly, I want to talk about more recent changes in the format and the management of evidence of government decision-making and the execution of public policy. I am thinking here of the use of administrative data rather than unstructured records to document the business of government, and the accessibility of government data, sometimes as open data, to researchers. Administrative data are data collected by government departments as part of their day-to-day activities, routinely gathered when registering people or events such as births, marriages, and deaths, to regulate the flow of goods or people across borders, to administer benefits such as pensions or obligations like tax. Data can be found in health records, vehicle licensing, tax, and social security systems. It is different from statistical data collected during a national census survey. Increasingly, administrative data compiled into data sets are replacing traditional records for documenting citizen interaction with the state. The UK government increasingly frames data as an asset, and the potential benefits in administrative data can be exploited by sharing and linking across data sets. The public good in reusing data to increase government efficiency and for research is set against the public good in protecting privacy. Privacy is a collective as well as an individual benefit, enabling the public to participate confidently in citizen-state interactions. Balancing these benefits is challenging given rapidly evolving technology, such as volume of storage and faster information retrieval and processing, and in data science, that is, more powerful statistical techniques, algorithms, hyperlinking, and AI, which have led to increasingly powerful means to collect, manage, combine, analyze, and derive insight from data. Administrative data is usually related to a person and may also be confidential or sensitive, so requires to be managed under GDPR. However, pseudonymized and de-identified data can be extremely valuable for research into a range of social, political, and economic questions. Increasingly, governments make anonymized data sets available for research, either under secure data harbor conditions or as publicly accessible open data sets. Open government data is a worldwide movement to open up government and public administration data in both human and machine-readable formats for reuse by civil society, the economy, media, and academia, as well as by politicians and public administrators. Record keepers may not have the technical computer science skills needed to manage administrative data, but we do bring social science questions to bear. In 2015 to 17, a group of archival science researchers led by myself at UCL investigated questions of trust, consent, and risk around government administrative data. We found that questions of trust were central to citizens' willingness to let governments create, collect, and preserve data, and to strike the right balance between the public goods in sharing administrative data across and beyond government. For those with responsibility for advising the government on policy in this area, the importance of securing public trust is well understood, and gaining trust from data subjects and broader society is essential in government data sharing initiatives. Archival definitions of trust are rooted in the record as object and have traditionally revolved around the question of what makes records trustworthy, showing that the record is what it purports to be, that's authenticity, and free from corruption and tampering, reliability. Public trust in reliability and authenticity depends on the record having adequate conditions of custody through the twin notions of trusted custodian and trusted repository. The three-way relationship between trusted data, trusted custodian, and trusted repository is what Heather McNeil describes as a central trope in archival science. However, the fluid nature of digital data, their dynamism and multiplicity, asks us to focus not on the digital record as an object, but on how trust operates in relational models. Administrative data requires us to think about human relationships. Trust then becomes a relational social construct. It supports the shared goodwill between parties in society, such as citizens and their governments, through an awareness of reciprocal duties and obligations. Across our case studies, researchers who used government administrative data over a long period of years spoke of a shift in the nature of the relationships underpinning their access to government administrative datasets. Previously, access depended on building up strong one-to-one relationships with key gatekeepers in government departments, which was increasingly being replaced with standardized impersonal mechanisms for government data access. Anthony Giddens suggests that the rise of modern abstract systems is a feature of an increasingly globalized world where traditional patterns of local face-to-face interactions have given way to increasingly distant relationships with absent others in abstract systems. Actors interact with the automated system rather than through personal contact. A complex legislative and regulatory environment with oversight mechanisms managing data quality, security, and use governs the relationship over traditional relational bonds. As a result, public trust in a faceless government is hard to establish and easy to lose. We examined this in the health data setting, which has suffered critical media coverage over accidental data loss by the National Health Service, or when patient data is shared with commercial companies without individual consent. Honora O'Neill identified one response to this in her phrase, the audit explosion, or the audit culture. This is exemplified in the rise of information governance in institutional contexts as a system of monitoring to control risk and increase accountability. The question raised by O'Neill is vital. Do these measures have any impact on securing or maintaining trust, since no system can entirely remove the risk of data loss? No matter how tightly regulated, controlled, secure, and audited the system is, human error or human deviance will emerge. Thinking then about ways of generating public trust in government data, we found that transparency over the purposes of a transaction, the processes that underpin it, and the safeguards surrounding it, and transparency over data flows, systems and programs, all enhance public trust in government data use. Providing clearly documented questions and answers expressed in everyday language, proactive public engagement through citizens' panels, and enabling conversations with citizens around complex data issues were all helpful. Transparency is a starting point for enabling a common approach between experts and citizens to shape the boundaries of what is socially acceptable in data use. The shaping of these boundaries then enables the development of adequate safeguards, checks and balances from which the trustworthiness of the process can be established and scrutinised. Relational models, which might help us to understand administrative data, become even more important in my final topic, which is about human-centred record keeping. Nation building should be for and about the citizens and their lives, not just about regulation, legislation, national archives and government data in the abstract. A recent research project at UCL sought to bring back the focus of record keeping to the people whose lives are captured in official records, putting their voices at the centre of the conversation. The Mirror project, Memory, Identity, Rights in Records, Access, is a collaborative research project which explored information rights in child social care in England. Care leavers are adults who were in out-of-home care as children, such as in public authority care, foster care, or children's homes. The Mirror project brought together care leavers, academics, social workers, and information professionals, and the findings argue for a fundamental shift towards participatory, human-centred record-keeping approaches. Mirror builds on other multidisciplinary research, supporting the information rights of marginalised communities, and considers how records are created, managed, activated, and reimagined by multiple agents through time. In family settings, stories, photographs, and memory objects document children's milestones and support narratives of identity and belonging. Archives give families access to shared relational histories and values. But looked after children often lack such narratives, especially where their childhood has been complex, disrupted, or traumatic. This discoherence can have negative impacts on their sense of worth and belonging. Mirror research showed that care records are critical to care experienced people's sense of identity and memory. In the absence of family records, they turn to the records created about them by social workers and care providers, so-called corporate parents, to reconstruct personal histories. Looked after children are extensively scrutinised and documented, producing detailed official care files, observations, reports, assessments and plans. These organisational records contain looked after children's personal histories. However, care leavers are only able to request access to these files by using the Data Protection Act Subject Access Request provision. Thousands of such requests are made each year in England to local authorities, charities, schools and the health service, but many care leavers find their files are either missing or heavily redacted, with passages blanked out. When care leavers obtain access to their records, they are confronted with the product of a bureaucratised, abstract system. As Australian care leavers Wilson and Goulding have observed, the scrutiny of this official gaze may be experienced as a dehumanising form of surveillance. A UK independent review of children's social care also reported that care experience carries stigma, can weaken identity, and found that accessing care files can play a role in the lifelong memory and identity needs of care experienced people. The voices, experiences, and feelings of children in care are rarely heard in their records. Young people often don't know what has been written in the files, and they have no access to records management systems. In this way, social care record keeping reflects their broader experience of powerlessness and lack of self-determination over their own lives, an inequality which may have long-term impacts. The lack of voice is one of the most powerful symbols of the information inequality experienced by care leavers. As our care experienced co-researcher John George said, "One of the most profound things for me about the file, and it screams the loudest, is my lack of voice. I just appear my scrawled out writing on page 52. My voice is totally stolen, and words are put in your mouth saying this is how you feel, and at times there's a conflict with what I believe." Another of our care experience contributors, Susan, on finally seeing her care records, expressed why these files matter. "I went through them and I read them, and I was crying," she said. "I can't possibly explain how important these records were. It can put things away so that you can carry on with the rest of your life. You see, to them, it's just paper, words on paper. But to the person who's reading it, who it's about, it's everything. It's their life." Mirror has developed a set of principles for caring record keeping in child social care. The first principle is that care experienced people should be able to participate in every stage of child social care record keeping if they choose, including the creation of records, the management of records, and the provision of access to records at any stage of their life. Mirror's focus on the human person at the centre of the bureaucratic record takes us back to the importance of human relationships between citizens and the state in establishing and maintaining trust in those who govern us. In such ways, records and information management, record-keeping systems, and government data must reflect the needs and voices of citizens and not only the bureaucratic requirements of an abstract automated system. I will now conclude my paper this morning with a few reflections on how my experience, perspectives, and the learning from research in archives and records management, which I have briefly shared with you, might point to ways in which records and information management play a part in nation building. In this paper, I have described an arc in the relationships between records and information and citizens. First, records and record keepers facilitate the implementation of legislation and regulation designed to enable citizens' information rights. Access to information, whether in the form of archival records or current government administrative data, empowers citizens to interrogate lawmakers and hold them to account. A fundamental part of that is the legislation which establishes people's rights to information as citizens and balances out the natural information inequality. Information is an expression of power, and those who govern hold more power than the governed. Information access for citizens signals a shift of power from the governors and lawmakers to those who are governed. freedom of information legislation has also removed the old timeframes of archival records being made available for access after a period of time, typically 20 or 30 years. By enabling requesters to ask for access to current or recent information, bringing the scrutiny into the present, rather than only for the historical past. Secondly, we have seen a big change of government information and records, from traditional paper registry file structures, mimicked by electronic record systems and digital file storage, which can be appraised and retained or destroyed according to traditional records principles. Now, most government activities, including e-government interactions with citizens, are carried out through digital transactional systems, which produce data sets rather than record-like files. Government administrative data are the evidence of those transactions, and in order to hold government to account, citizens need access to government data, not only government records. This change has many consequences, including the possibility of citizens having detailed, granular information about government, almost in real time, in large, complex data sets, in the context of rolling global news cycles and huge amounts of social media data. This enables greater transparency, but also greater chances of mis- and disinformation. Record keepers are important in maintaining good records and ensuring accurate government data is accessible. Finally, in an abstract and increasingly impersonal world, with the COVID-19 pandemic further isolating and breaking social relationships, record keepers are important in returning us to human-centered records, enabling the voices of citizens, especially the marginalized and underprivileged, to speak and be heard. Ensuring that people's stories are heard, as we have shown in the Mirror project, is perhaps the most important contribution which record keepers can make to nation building. What is a nation, after all, if it is not about the people who energize and reignite it? Thank you for listening.
And thank you very much, Professor Elisabeth Shepherd, for your wide-ranging lecture this morning. Legislation and the regulation of for records access, looking as well as at the Open Government Administration data policy, and closing with the human-centered record keeping with special reference to the Mirror project and information rights of citizens, and so much more. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to do our Q&A, and we will take questions live from persons who are in the room and for persons who are online. I believe we have close to 200 persons online, so we will take those questions. Professor Shepherd will take those questions in the chat, and for those persons who are in the space, if you have a question, we have additional microphones for you. She'll be able to hear you and answer your questions, comments. Do we have any takers in the room? Yes? Could you pass the microphone to the right? Thank you.
It's not a question, just a comment.
I believe that's not live, yes?
Hello? Okay.
There you go.
It's not a question, it's a comment with respect to the human-centered record keeping, but I really appreciate the reference to the cases, or the two individuals in childcare. But the importance of our sensitivity as record keepers, that it is not just about data or something objective, but there is that element that speaks to the citizen or whomever we care for, but whomever the records that we hold are about. And so I just wanted to thank her for that, because I think I really had a different sense of the whole matter or importance of record keeping, but approaching it though from a human perspective. So thank you for that.
Yes, I'm sure we can benefit from the principles that were shared for caring record keeping in child social care. Yes. We have another question in the back. You
Yes.
can introduce yourself before asking your question.
Okay, I'm Erica Shakes from the PIOJ.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor, for your presentation. However, you mentioned that there are some gaps in archives and records management, which require some strong regulatory framework. I just want you to emphasize or explain to us some of the gaps that you realize in this system. Thank you.
I don't believe we're hearing you, Professor. Just one moment. Unmute. Could you unmute?
I am unmuted.
Oh, we're hearing you now.
Okay.
Go right ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So thank you very much for the question. I was speaking very much just about a UK context, and it's the case in the UK that when you look at regulation and legislation concerning records, the provision is much stronger for the records of national government and the national ministries, and it's weaker for other parts of the public sector in regions and localities, towns and cities. And the legislation doesn't fully cover the whole spectrum. So whilst there is some legislation for local government, for example, it's not as strong as for national government records. And also the way that the funding is organised means that whilst I'm sure the National Archives don't think they have enough funds, they are better and more reliably funded than archives in localities. So that's what I was referring to. So it's a bit of a patchwork, a bit of a network, and there are some gaps. It's also a bit strange, perhaps, in the UK that freedom of information applies to all public authorities, of which there are many, down to the smallest parish council. So they are required to respond to freedom of information requests in the same way that a government ministry would be. And GDPR, so data protection, governing privacy and personal and sensitive information, applies to all organisations, including non-governmental organisations, businesses, and absolutely everybody. So there is this kind of patchwork of legislation and regulation, and it applies differently in different sectors. And therefore there are some gaps, and that's what I was referring to. I hope that's helpful.
Yes, thank you. Do we have any questions online? No questions online? And
do you want me to? There is one, I don't know.
Go ahead, Professor.
Shall I read it out?
Sure, go ahead.
Sorry. It's from Latoya Morris, representing the Passport, Immigration and Citizenship Agency. And the question is, what project management methodologies, tools or techniques did you incorporate when building out your records information management program, if any? Well, I don't actually do that. So what I do is research and train and educate other people to go and work in the records and information professions. And so I don't have an answer to that question because I don't actually carry that professional work out myself. I don't work in the records services or records department. I'm an academic, so I don't any longer do that kind of practitioner. When we're teaching our students, we teach them a range of different tools, programs, and so on, because they may go and work in any kind of records and information service or archival service. And so we don't know what they need to know in terms of specifics, specific systems. So what we do is give them the conceptual and theoretical frameworks, and we introduce them in a practical way to some systems in a small kind of way as for their practical projects. But I don't have specific answer to that question because that's not my job to do that, I'm afraid.
I have a quick question for you, Professor. You spoke about the gaps just now, but I'm interested to find out how robust is the legislation and regulation relating to privacy at the national level in the UK?
I think it's pretty robust. It's not something I work on in a direct way at the moment. We have a very, I think we have a good arm's length Information Commissioner's office, and his office is responsible for the operation of FOI, freedom of information and data protection, and a number of other environmental information regulations and so on. He does have quite strong powers. I mean, generally speaking, it's the initial response to complaints and questions that people ask his office, which there are thousands of questions asked every year. His main role really is to provide practical information, guidance and so on. And so there's a lot of really good resources on the Information Commissioner's website. And it's only really if something goes seriously wrong and there's a complaint which is upheld. There was a complaint this week, I think, upheld against TikTok sharing personal data, and they have been fined millions of pounds. The Information Commissioner does, if necessary, have quite strong powers of fines up to £17.5 million a year, I think, as a fine. So monetary penalties can be applied where that's necessary. But obviously the preference is to ensure that organisations develop good practice, follow the good practice guidance and behave well, rather than that they need to be reprimanded or even fined. So I think it's quite a good system in that it's arm's length. It's long established, well established, the Information Commissioner's role and his office. They are always under resource constraints, as the whole public sector is. But nevertheless, I do think it's quite a good complementary system to the lawmakers, the regulation, the government legislation, and the independent Commissioner's office.
Okay, thank you for that response. If we have no more questions in the room or online, I believe at this time it is appropriate for me to ask Mrs. Raquel Strawn Inirarity to come with a vote of thanks. She's a senior archivist, Archives Unit, Jamaica Archives and Records Department. Please make her welcome.
Thank you. After such an engaging session, it is my hope that as records and information management professionals, our passion to manage and preserve the records in our care has indeed been reignited, knowing that the proper management of records is one of the key success factors in the development of any nation. Master of Ceremonies, Mrs. Marlene Stevenson-Daly, Mr. Carlton McFarlane, Chief Executive Officer of the Registrar General's Department and Deputy Keeper of the Records, Mr. Damian Cox, Acting Principal Director in the Information Division, Office of the Prime Minister, Ms. Valsina Hamill, Acting Senior Director, Public Sector Modernization Division in the Office of the Cabinet, Deputy Director of the Institute of Jamaica, Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, our guest lecturer, Dr. Elisabeth Shepherd, Professor of Archives and Records Management at the University College London, Mrs. Claudette Thomas, Government Archivist, Jamaica Archives and Records Department, members of the Archives Advisory Committee, or distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. It is indeed a privilege and an honor to move the vote of thanks on behalf of the Jamaica Archives and Records Department at this, the launch of Records and Information Management Month 2023. I'm going back in time. I wish to express gratitude to Ms. Christelle Scott, who offered the opening remarks in her capacity as Acting Senior Archivist for Records Management at the Jamaica Archives and Records Department.
Thank you for the analogy of a stove being reignited, having lost its fuel, and JARD's role in carrying the flame across Jamaica as the bridge to the future. We also extend gratitude to Ms. Valsina Hamill, who brought greetings on behalf of the Public Sector Modernization Division, which serves as the project management arm for the implementation of the government's Records and Information Management Program across its ministries, departments, and agencies. Records and Information Management will indeed become the backbone that bolsters the modernization of Jamaica through digitalization. I must mention our deep sense of appreciation to Mr. Carlton McFarlane for bringing greetings and officially declaring Records and Information Management Month 2023 opened. He ably reminded us that records are evidence and admonished us to recognize the financial underpinnings of proper records management. Further, we are grateful to Mr. Cox, who gave an excellent overview on the Records and Information Management Program and issued the certificates of achievements and plaques to the 8 MDAs which successfully completed their pilot implementation of the RIM systems, namely the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, the Auditor General's Department, the Heart NSTA Trust, the Institute of Jamaica, the Jamaica Tertiary Education Commission, the Ministry of Justice, the Office of the Cabinet, and the Jamaica Archives and Records Department. We will indeed be trees planted with roots by the rivers of water. Mrs. Nicole Patrick Shaw, thank you for sharing the RIM implementation journey of the Institute of Jamaica, which began in 2019. There were valuable lessons in your testimonial, which will be shared with other entities who are currently implementing their RIM systems. We would also like to acknowledge and thank Ms. Kimberly Blackwin, one of our records management analysts at the Jamaica Archives, who read the citation to the entities during the off-boarding ceremony. To our guest lecturer, Professor Elisabeth Shepherd, and also my lecturer when I did Records and Archives Management at UCL, we express our gratitude for sharing your knowledge and expertise in records and information management and its importance to development. In your paper entitled Perspectives from the North, Records and Information Management and Nation Building, we were challenged to look at 3 areas in record keeping. 1, legislation and regulations for records access, open government administrative data and public trust, and thirdly, human-centered record-keeping approaches and the role of the records manager in enabling the rights of citizens. Thank you for these inspiring words. I would like to take this opportunity to place on record our hearty thanks to Mrs. Claudette Thomas for introducing our guest lecturer and for her leadership, guidance, and support for records and information management and its implementation across government entities. To our performers, Girl and Javon Jones, your performance was indeed amazing and we enjoyed it. Thank you. To our Master of Ceremonies, Mrs. Marlene Stevenson-Daly, thank you for the grace, poise, and elegance with which you have hosted this RIM launch and public lecture. An event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels started rolling weeks ago, and we're fortunate to be backed by a team of motivated and dedicated staff and colleagues who know their job and are results-oriented. I cannot thank you enough for your involvement and willingness to make this event a success. To all, I say a very big thank you.
I believe all that's left for me to do at this time is to thank Mrs. Strawn Innerarity, or Senior Archivist, for thanking everyone. You did a wonderful job, and I think I want you to give her another round of applause. Activities that are to come for the month of April as you celebrate RIM Wednesdays. As making notes, you have various publications and media interviews that people need to be looking out and listening out for. And of course, on April 19, the training of trainers, and that's going to be April 19, I think I said. And then on the 26th, we have the RIM Shout Out, Clear the Desk Day. Sounds like that's going to be a lot of fun. But in all seriousness, this is such an important month for you. And I think this is an area that many times gets taken for granted. People don't understand necessarily all of the implications and the impact of having great records, whether it is for decision making, whether it is for our socio-economic movement, financial, whatever it is, but so very important. And for me this morning, as my friend in the back, I can't remember his name, but he came up this morning to represent his organization. As he said, just looking at the records, not just from a data perspective, but just from that human side. That resonated with me so much because I know of so many people who don't have a clue of their past, of their history, of that sense of self and where they're coming from, and it's something for us to think about. It was posited by Professor Shepherd earlier on, and it really is something for us to think about as we go about the business of managing information. I started off by saying that knowledge is power. Power provides information, and information leads to education. So it means we still have to go out there and to continue that process of educating our people and making them understand a little bit more about how important this process is. Education breeds wisdom, and wisdom is liberation. And people are not liberated sometimes because of a lack of knowledge. It has been my pleasure sharing with you this morning as you did your official launch, did your offboarding, and I look forward to the other 51 entities that are already part of the program, whether you're in cohort 1, 2, or 3, and I believe there's a 4th. Yes? So whatever cohort you fall, many of them are probably online listening to us right now, so it's time to put a little passion, a little pep into your step and to get going so that you can reignite. Yes? Start burning again. It's an action word. And so as we leave here today, I encourage us all, online and in the room, to take action. It has been my pleasure sharing with you, reigniting a nation for greatness, managing and preserving the records of our nation as we salute all our records management professionals in the room and online. And we wish you Godspeed. God bless you. Have a great day.